A group of students who are in favor of more individual freedom did a great pop-up store today here in Ottawa. The organization is called Students for Liberty, and they took over a space on Donald Street in Vanier and ran what's called the Nanny State Store. This is something that has happened in cities across Canada over the past several months, and today it came to Ottawa, and unfortunately I was not able to be there, but thankfully we're able to get David Clement on. He's the Director of North American Programs for Students for Liberty and was part of this fun little venture today. Fill us in on what this is, and I'm going to tweet out photos that you posted right now showing the basically the whole store's no name, and there's no brands, just a lot of warning labels, right?
Yeah. So the goal behind our project was to give consumers a bit of a glimpse as to what a storefront might actually look like if we never pushed back against some of these ridiculous lifestyle regulations. So what you would experience if you walked in, you'd see plain packaged pop, chips, and chocolate bars with giant warning labels.
I've got pop and chips in front of me right now. Are they dangerous for me, David?
I mean, if you eat too much of them, I'm sure they certainly are dangerous. But I also trust that you're an informed adult and you can make that call for yourself. And I think that the government needs to have that perspective when it comes to adult decisions and basically say, look, I mean, there are a variety of things that are bad for you. There are things that are bad for you if you overuse them or misuse them. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're an adult, and part of the wonder and blunder of being an adult is personal responsibility. And I hope our government doesn't continue to take that away from people.
If you follow me on Twitter, then you will see these photos of the products that David's talking about, because I've been retweeting the ones that he put out, that Students for Liberty Canada put out. And they don't look like an appetizing bag of chips. I've got a, nice little old granddad snacks potato chips in front of me. And when I see that package, I know what kind of chip is in there. It's different than a Mrs. Vicky. So I like that's the one I want today. In the nanny state world, it would just be black bags that say chips on them and a giant warning label.
Yes, yeah. So that's exactly it. What we have is, it says chips. Because you can only identify the product name. You don't want people to be enticed by the brand name or any fancy colors or logos or anything like that. And then a giant warning that says, eating chips leads to obesity and will kill you, with a giant warning kind of exclamation point to hammer home the point. So that's what our packaging looks like. And I mean, people loved engaging with this stuff. They immediately saw, in our kind of own cheeky way, the value of questioning some of the more recent aspects of legislation that have been put forward that do kind of trample on individual rights. They trample on consumer choice, and they infantilize adults and ultimately treat them like they're kids.
Well, we've just received the report this week on legalizing marijuana, and one of the recommendations is that you can't sell it next to alcohol or tobacco, but like tobacco, it has to be in plain packaging. We're moving that way in cigarettes. We're not there yet, but soon there will be just graphic warning labels and no brand identification.
Yep.
What's your view on this part of the recommendation? Because I thought part of the argument for legalizing pot was adults can do what they choose.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's two parts. It's adults can do what they choose, and there's also the criminal aspect to that. And I mean, if we look at plain packaging with tobacco, the one major experiment with it is Australia. And what did plain packaging do? It fed criminal activity, and it fed contraband tobacco. I'm not 100% sure on if there's the exact parallel there for something like legal marijuana, but I'm sure it certainly wouldn't help. And I mean, to acknowledge...
Well, I don't buy the stuff, but I don't believe it comes in bags with brands on it right now, so maybe there won't be the same
Well,
difference.
yeah, I mean, unless you're a medical patient, then I think, the best of my knowledge, there's branding and the companies that create medical cannabis have all of those things. I mean, just like any other company would. But I mean, at the end of the day, once it becomes a legal product, it's a legal product, and it's a legal product for a reason, and I would argue for good reasons. And once it is a legal product, don't try to treat adults like kids in the process of trying to limit branding or have no colors or no product identification or things like that. It just, I mean, it's in my mind, it would be a bit of a black eye on that whole process of legalization, to go the route of not allowing for any of the aspects of consumer choice that you would expect otherwise, that we see in Colorado.
Speaking with David Clement, Director of North American Programs for the organization Students for Liberty. David, we keep hearing that millennials are very much in favor of socialism or in favor of communism. Every few weeks there seems to be a big mainstream media report out there. You're selling something completely different.
Yes,
you're selling liberty, libertarianism to a degree, I guess, but free enterprise. What's the reaction like from students? Primarily, your message is aimed at people on post-secondary campuses. What is the reaction like?
The reaction is overwhelmingly positive. I think when people get that perception of millennials and the appeals of socialism or even the extreme of communism, what we often find on campus is those people who ascribe to that worldview are the loudest and proudest people on campus in terms of shouting out everybody else down and making sure that their viewpoint is heard. So our perspective is very refreshing for a lot of people, because there are many students who are politically apathetic. They're socially tolerant, which is certainly in the libertarian or classical liberal umbrella, and they're starting to see the burden of government. I mean, one easy example that appeals to millennials is the topic of Uber. Most millennials think it's absolutely ridiculous that you have local governments caving to the taxi cartel and things like that. And that's kind of their introduction to markets and their introduction to creative destruction and the market process of essentially appealing to consumers and making better services. And then all of a sudden you blend those two ideas of being socially tolerant and understanding that markets are good and understanding that we want to limit the burden of government so that people can do cool stuff and create new services or products based on really interesting ideas. And then all of a sudden you have this new voice that's growing on campus that's very much at odds with what you described. And it's making for some interesting interactions on campus.
Well, I hope that these things, Uber and Airbnb and the government reaction to them, make some people have the penny drop rather than just have them take an Uber to go to a protest calling for more government intervention in the economy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that's what we're seeing for younger people, especially on Canadian campuses, but throughout North America, is we're seeing the start of that process where they realize, okay, well, maybe the request for more government isn't going to get me the outcomes that I particularly like or want. And it shifts their perspective. And Students for Liberty is a great resource for these students because we give them the resources and empower them to go out and do interesting kind of activism projects like our Nanny State campaign, which we've been doing for about a year now.
Well, I encourage everyone to go and check out the photos on my Twitter feed, twitter.com/Brian Lilley. You'll see David's Twitter handle there. You'll see Students for Liberty, and you'll see the great photos of the awful Soviet-looking products. I'm sure they taste good underneath, but you made them look awful, David.
Yeah, they do taste good. Somebody asked us what's in them, and we said ice-cold, bubbly freedom.
All right. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot.
If you're on a campus, you know somebody that is, maybe this is an organization they want to check out. I'm Brian Lilley. This is Beyond the News.